Breaking news, President Trump not revealing whether the U.S. will get involved in Iran.
I said it's very late. You know? I said it's very late to be talking.
Mr. President.
I don't know, there's a big difference between now and a week ago, right? Big difference.
And this comes as the Israel-Iran conflict is now in its 6th day. So this was overnight over Tehran. Video from a semi-official Iranian media outlet showing air defenses repelling projectiles over the city.
The U.S. is scrambling big time right now with more assets to the region, including a second aircraft carrier strike group and more than 30 tankers for in-air refueling. This morning, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is rejecting President Trump's calls for unconditional surrender. This is what he said just a few hours ago.
Iran has never surrendered. Why should we surrender? If they threaten us again, they will receive an irreparable strike.
Fareed Zakaria, the host of CNN's GPS, is joining us now live from London. Fareed, everyone wants to know if the U.S. is going to get directly militarily involved in this conflict. What's your analysis?
Well, President Trump is clearly enjoying playing the part of a very unpredictable leader. You know, some people call it the madman theory of foreign policy, where, you know, you deliberately make it so that no one can guess what you're going to do. And you're sort of trying to out-crazy everyone else. And Trump is doing that, and he's doing it very effectively. But I think at heart what's happening here is it's sort of FOMO foreign policy, by which I mean President Trump did appear to be negotiating with the Iranians, and Steve Witkoff was due to meet with them. He had been meeting with them. Then Bibi Netanyahu decides to move forward. It succeeds wildly. It succeeds, I think, even more than Israelis expected. And Trump now wants to get in on the action. So he's, you know, taking credit in a sense for the Israeli action, but does that mean he'll join in? So far, Trump has tended to be fairly cautious about major military escalations. So I'm going to guess that this is mostly Trump trying to pressure the Iranians to come to the negotiating table with essentially a surrender, which is to give up their right to enrichment. You know, this was the issue that appeared to be the obstacle. So what he wants is a real win on negotiation. He can say, I achieved what nobody else was able to achieve, and he's rattling the saber for that reason. Now, there's always a danger, you know, that a scholar once said there's one problem with threats in foreign policy. They can be very expensive if they fail. It means you have to carry it out. If the Iranians don't agree, then it leaves Trump in a bind.
So we know, just based on the available intelligence and, you know, talking to Israel, that it cannot fully eradicate Iran's nuclear capabilities without U.S. involvement. If the U.S. does get involved to try to take out Iran's nuclear capabilities, it would take more than just going in with one strike, right? Just given the depth and the complexities around it?
You never know, you know, in military affairs what exactly might happen. But, I mean, on paper, the U.S. has B-2s, the stealth bombers, with these bunker-busting bombs that could probably destroy Fordo. I mean, they could essentially destroy the whole mountain, and the whole, you know, the entire facility would collapse in all likelihood, probably with just one or two strikes. As I say, on paper, that is the American capability. The Israelis have nothing like that, but Fordo is not a, you know, hermetically sealed facility. There are, you know, heat vents, there are entrances. So there would be ways for the Israelis to very significantly degrade Fordo. It would take many, many strikes, but they have the capacity to do that. I mean, the Israeli pilots are now flying over Iran as though it's their own territory. There is no air defense of any kind. As long as they don't have to get to the ground, they can just keep pummeling and hope that, you know, as I say again, these things are unpredictable. You keep hitting at the entrances, the the heat shafts, the vents, and something could easily give way.
It's interesting you say that, Fareed, because Trump in his remarks just a few minutes ago said, and I'm quoting him now, they have no air defense, referring to the Iranians, meaning the Israelis, for all practical purposes, destroyed Iran's air defense system. Is that right?
Yes, it's even more dramatic than that, Wolf. They've destroyed all of Iran's air defenses. You remember they did that several months ago after the Hezbollah attacks. But what they've also done is, in this extraordinarily clever move, they got all the Iranian commanders into a room and then struck the rooms, killing almost all the missile commanders, which meant that the people who would order a strike on Israel the minute the Iranians began striking were all dead. And so that gave the Israelis a window to destroy a whole bunch of missile launchers. So one of the reasons you're not seeing a lot of Iranian ballistic missiles launched at Israel, fewer than Israel had predicted by far, is that the missile launchers have been destroyed by Israel. So they'd have no air defenses. They also have many fewer missile launchers than they did. They still have a bunch of missiles, but you can't do a lot with missiles if you don't have the launchers to launch them.
Good point.
All right, Fareed Zakaria, thank you very much. Always appreciate you coming on to give your analysis.
I want to go right now to CNN chief international correspondent Clarissa Ward. She's joining us from Tel Aviv. So what are you seeing there in Tel Aviv overnight? Sirens were going off, and there was a lot more activity over the skies, right?
Well, there was a lot of activity and a lot of sirens, but not so many ballistic missiles as we have been seeing earlier on. Roughly 30 missiles last night, 30 missiles the night before. That's a big departure from some 200 missiles on the first night of this chapter in this conflict. So as a result of that, perhaps you're definitely feeling and noticing a more relaxed posture here in Israel today. And we have heard now the military has made recommendations to essentially allow some semblance of normalcy to begin again, some semblance of reopening the economy. What that might look like is things like people being able to go back to work in certain situations, more shops being able to open. We heard today from Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, basically saying that this gradual phased reopening of the economy and allowing people to move around more freely is what he called a message of victory over Iran. At the same time, nobody is completely relaxing, and particularly in anticipation of whatever decision President Trump makes vis-a-vis whether to intervene more forcefully in this conflict. The U.S. Embassy here in Jerusalem has announced that it is closed today, tomorrow, and Friday. No real official reason given, but certainly the timing is not coincidental, I would say, and also particularly given the fact that many Americans are stranded here at the moment and trying to get out of Israel. It's certainly an unusual time in that context for the U.S. Embassy to close for 3 days. So people waiting and watching and preparing for whatever comes, but certainly a sense on the ground, particularly here in Tel Aviv, that people are breathing a little bit easier as a result of what is believed to be significant damage done to Iran's capacity to launch those ballistic missiles, which were coming out in full force just a few nights ago, Wolf.
All right, Clarissa Ward, thank you so much.